Hi, it's Chris Larson. Thanks for watching the Optimizer Hunting Podcast on YouTube. If you're listening on iTunes or Podbean, check out our YouTube channel as well. We're all over the place, and we're at the ATA show, and we're kind of doing some of these video podcasts. It's fun to get out and meet the people out there and what they're doing in the industry. This is Dave Chevalier. Dave, thanks for taking a few minutes here and speaking with us here at the HHA booth. You're with Crossbow Warriors, and tell us about what Crossbow Warriors is.
Crossbow Warriors is about basically the main thing we're doing right now is education, promotion, and trying to just get more people involved in the crossbow world. I've been in the industry for a couple of years now, and what I found is when Michigan flipped over to allow the crossbow rules out there to people to use crossbows freely, so many people were uneducated. They were afraid of them. They didn't know how to sell them as a dealer. They didn't know how to promote it. And it was frustrating watching people how they were getting injured and hurt on them and stuff like that. So I'm like, you know what can I do to make it kind of a younger crowd, to teach them and educate them from the beginning? And so I started off and I joined a couple organizations and stuff and started learning and what was working and what wasn't working. Went off and started Crossbow Warriors. So what we've done with Crossbow Warriors is taken it to the next level, and we've started our Crossbow Warrior Facebook and our forums that we got going, and we're out there just kind of to promote the crossbow world. You know, we come to shows like this, we learn what's out there available, then we do how-to videos on the products, and then just kind of teach our people.
How did you get started with the crossbow?
I got started with the crossbow. It's funny because everybody's like, oh, you know, what injury do you have? I don't have an injury. You know, it was just something that interested me. And you know, the state, like I said, allowed it. I went to the local dealer and bought a crossbow, and what I did was I let him kind of almost push me into a crossbow, you know. And then it was another thing that kind of frustrated me is I went in and bought this crossbow, spent all this money, and it didn't fit me. It wasn't the right crossbow for me. And so I went out there, killed my first buck, and then it just took off from there. And then from that point, it was like, you know, what could I do to make somebody else's experience better? And that was the whole thing.
And what's that been like for you? You've been doing this for a while now. I'm sure you've gotten feedback from people. What's it been like for you to hear from some people who maybe learned quite a bit from you?
I tell you what, that's the greatest thing, the greatest compliment, I guess, that you could ever get is when we get, you know, after people are out there and they come to our site and we talk to them and explain things, what we do, and then they come back and, hey, thanks, I made my first purchase, here it is. You know, it wasn't this brand, it was this brand, but we don't push brands. You know, we're all about what's going to fit, what's going to work for you, price points. And I tell you, for them to come back and tell you that they had a great experience and now they're out there killing their first animals is phenomenal.
Yeah, and another thing you guys are focusing on is youth, and that's something that in this show we've seen a lot of. There's a lot of companies that are coming out with youth bows and more compact bows. And what are you guys doing with youth?
Well, and you bring up a great point there, because up until probably 3 years ago, there was nothing out there for youth, or even not just youth, smaller frame people. So what we do with youth is we started this Little Warrior program, okay? And what the Little Warrior program is we kind of have an educational thing where it's a 30-minute video, they sit down and go through it. And then we're going to have different levels. We're going to go through, you know, getting their first deer and all that stuff. And it's all about, you know, working with them. And what I do with the Little Warrior program is I take it. I've actually had Boy Scout troops out to my house. They spend the weekend out there. We go through the safety seminars with them, take them out in the woods, and we let them shoot. I tell you, that's been phenomenal because we're getting kids from the city that would never have that opportunity. Last year I also took the Little Warrior program on the road and went to a couple different dealers. And we have classroom settings where we talk to them, sit down, explain the different bows to them, and then go from there.
What's the reaction of the kids when they get to shoot the crossbow for the first time?
Absolutely love it. And you know what? It's funny. What we found is, let's get the kids involved, okay? Then the next thing goes from the kids, the parents are now like sitting through the classes now, and we're bringing everybody involved. Because the best thing about the crossbow is you can buy one crossbow, the family's going to use it, and then they sit there and decide, you know, if the kid's really going to stick with it or not. And most of them were using crossbows as kind of like a stepping stone to get into the archery world, you know? And the best thing is when a kid goes out, and they're going to shoot a buck at 20 yards, their first year out there with a crossbow. And for them to put the time and effort into it for a compound bow, they don't have that right now. Or maybe they don't even have parents that have the ability to teach them that.
And that's another thing that we see all the time is moms are getting involved too. There's a lot more crossbows that are being designed for women as well.
Oh, it's phenomenal. I mean, I tell you, if you look at the crossbow world 3 years ago to today, the safety mechanisms have changed, the weights have changed. I mean, the ease of cocking the crossbow. Everybody's like, oh my God. The first thing a couple years ago, everybody's like, well, what kind of cocking winch do you have and how do you cock this back? Now these bows, you can do it with basically your fingers. It's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many new things out for this year. It's day 2 of the show. So if you had an opportunity to kind of walk around, what are some of the cool things you've seen at the show in the crossbow world?
The crossbow world there's a big change this year. It's kind of neat. And what we've seen is things were speed. Everything was speed. Let's get to 400 feet per second. This year, we're seeing lighter bows, more compact bows. Let's focus on smaller, narrower stuff. And that's been totally amazing. I mean, you got the new Hortons out there now. Then the Parker's coming out with some lighter stuff. And the Excalibur's got that new micro, which is incredible. And then, of course, the Dart and Rebel. I mean, that is a machine now. I mean, it's the way it shoots is just incredible. But yeah, so it's the compactness is really starting to come back, and the speed's kind of going by the wayside.
Yeah, that race for speed we saw the last few years, it's not here at this show. And do you think it's a good thing that people are starting to look at some other things rather than just speed?
Yes, and the reason why is because I think what we've noticed, and here's what I keep telling everybody, I like a bow that shoots between 320 and maybe 360 feet per second. When you start getting over that, it's more of an education, because now you got to learn about tuning your arrows and your broadheads, and it's a whole different avenue than just learning how to shoot your bow.
And with you guys, you're helping people too. You talked about kind of helping people make a decision on what to buy, but once that purchase is made and how to take care of their bow, is it something that you guys are doing as well?
Yes, because you'd be surprised. We had a lot of people that will sit there and say, oh, I bought this bow and it blew up on me after 10 shots, 20 shots. They didn't know they had to lube the rails and wax the strings and any of that maintenance stuff. So those are the things we talk about. And then they get confused about mechanical broadheads versus fixed broadheads, and you're just trying to tell them the differences of it. And it's just, the education could go on forever with these, you know. And then when we start talking into scopes, that's a whole different ball game, you know. So it's trying to find out a product, you know, how to tune things, how to sight things in, and what will work for them, you know, and at least get them pointed in the direction. We can never give somebody an official answer, because everybody was like, well, what's the best crossbow out there? There is none, you know. You'll never have that answer.
So with crossbows, there's just so much going on there, and a lot of people that buy a crossbow, it's their first time really bow hunting. Maybe they rifle hunted before, and some of them, it's their first introduction to hunting. What are some ideas and maybe some tips for hunting with a crossbow that can be different than maybe someone who's just been rifle hunting their whole life?
Well, the biggest thing is trying to break that stereotype of that they're going to be able to just take it and just pull the trigger and shoot it. It goes back to your basic fundamentals of archery and having to know your yardage and how your arrow is going to drop at certain weights. Those are the things that we try to teach people, you know, and you know, and you're not shooting long range. You know, we try to tell people, you know, 30, 35 yards, if you can get underneath that, that's great. If you're going to take shots at 50 yards or beyond, you need to make sure you're practicing that over and over, because there's so many variables once you get beyond that.
So people, I think, and we see that too, a lot of people give us a call and they're like, yeah, you know, can I shoot a deer at 80 yards? Well, you can shoot a deer target at 80 yards, but maybe shooting a deer at 80 yards is a bad idea.
And you know, it's funny because we practice that all the time. I'll go out and I love shooting 80, 100 yards, 120 yards. There's no way I would ever take that shot at an animal, because I know that within that 100 yards, so many things could happen. You can't see those sticks or twigs out there, and I will never go to shoot just to take a shot at an animal. I want to make sure I'm going to make a clean shot.
And you're using the speed dial, the HHA Optimizer speed dial. Yeah. Tell us about using that.
The HHA speed dial has been a phenomenal thing. It was kind of funny because when I first started hearing about it, I'm like, I don't know if I want that extra thing on my bow. It's kind of, I was actually afraid of it, okay? So I put it on the bow, sighted it in, and it was kind of cool. But you know what I did with my crossbow is I took back and I stepped back and I put it on my compound bow, because you know, it's like you shoot your crossbow, you don't shoot a crossbow like you do a compound bow. Compound, you're out there all day shooting 40, 50 rounds, it doesn't matter. I put it on there, I got used to it that way, and then by switching it over to my crossbow, now I kind of got the idea of how it worked, and I tell you, that thing is dead on. I have never seen a product where you can just sit there and range your animal, set the dial, and boom, it's dead on.
Yeah, it's amazing. One thing that we like to talk to people about when it comes to that speed dial is a lot of people are like, do I really want to mess around with that wheel? For kids, it is just the best, because I like to take kids out and to tell them, oh yeah, it's at 30 yards, so use the third reticle. Yeah, right. With this, there's one point in there, and I can just dial it to 30. We range the animal, dial it to 30, and all they have to worry about is one aiming point. And you can teach them on the range. If you're shooting at the range at 20 yards all the time, then all of a sudden the animal's at 30, it's still going to look the same to them through that scope.
You know, and that's a great point, because I do that with my friends too, not just the kids. I've got a lot of buddies, and I try to teach them, because I'm always testing different crossbows and different scopes and stuff, some of these scopes get kind of busy and confuse people. You run an HHA speed dial and you're running that scope on there with a single dot, there's no room for error. It's amazing.
Yeah, just about everybody you ever hear that, we missed this animal. So what happened? Well, he was at 30 and I had my 20 on him or something. Yep. And this kind of takes that out. And a lot of people, they want to say they don't want to mess around with that wheel, but when you think about how much happens at that point of impact, it really takes a lot of the confusion and guesswork out of the shot.
It really does. And then I kind of use it as a stepping stone too. What I'll do is when they take their first animal or whatever, I kind of judge what level they're at, right? And then some of my buddies I'll take and say, okay, here's your 20-yard line, here's your 30-yard line. I'll go out and I'll mark that for them. So that way that they don't, because to try to get them to use a rangefinder and an optimizer and all that kind of confuses them too, because they're getting into it. So I'll set up markers out there. They know at this marker I'm going to go to 25 or 30, and that makes a difference too.
If somebody wants to look you up, how do we find?
Easiest way to find us is on crossbowwarriors.com. From there, there's a link to our main Facebook page. And then what we also have is we have a little icon you'll see on there. It's called the Trading Post. And what we do in the Trading Post is where you can buy, sell, or trade products, and there's a lot of that going on. But it's also where people can come and just talk freely. It gives them a two-way avenue to be able to talk about stuff. They'll ask questions, and we moderate it all the time. And plus, the people that we have on there have been great so far. I can tell you, the followers that we have are top-notch. And they'll take care of you. They won't kind of misguide you. They'll give you their honest opinion, and then somebody else come on and give you their opinion. So you get to hear what's going really on in the world, that people are buying products and not necessarily being told this is what you got to get.
Perfect. Thanks for meeting with us. It was a lot of fun. Look them up, crossbowwarriors.com, and thanks for listening. Again, if you're watching this on YouTube, check out our Podbean channel. Check us out on iTunes. If you're on iTunes, check us out on YouTube. We're also on Facebook, and you can see us on our web home. It's hhasports.com. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.